The Galactic Empire's flagship, Dominion Spear, hovered in low orbit above Earth, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars over the Atlantic. Commander Vorlith stood in the observation chamber, hands clasped behind his back, his silver scales catching the faint blue light of Earth's surface. This was a third planet they had cataloged in the outer spiral arm this cycle, and it was already marked as a Class 5, inhabited but primitive, a simple conquest. Scan results confirmed the dominant species lacked interstellar travel. Lieutenant Ashrek reported, his voice tinged with boredom. Their cities are densely populated, but their technology is rudimentary at best. A prey world. Vorlitha's lips curled into a faint smile, exposing sharp, predatory teeth. Another trophy for the Empire. Another species to subjugate. Excellent. Initiate the standard protocol. Transmit the surrender demand. The lieutenant hesitated for a fraction of a second, an almost imperceptible flicker of unease crossing his face. Commander, their electromagnetic frequencies, they're chaotic, highly varied. It's difficult to isolate their primary communication network. Vorlitha's smile faded. Primitive and disorganized. Do they even qualify as sapient? He waved a dismissive claw. No matter. Target their largest population center and project the message. Let them behold the power of the Empire. Within minutes, a holographic projection of Vorlitha's towering, armored form appeared in the skies over Washington, D.C., casting a shadow across the National Mall. Crowds gathered below, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. The alien figure's crimson eyes scanned the throng, and his voice boomed across the city, translated into every known Earth language. People of Earth, you stand before the might of the Galactic Empire. Your existence is hereby annexed. Surrender your world and your resources, and you may serve the Empire as vassals. Resist, and you will be eradicated. In the Situation Room of the White House, President Olivia Martinez leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable as the hologram of the alien commander loomed before her. Around her, military advisors and scientists murmured in barely contained panic, but she raised a hand to silence them. "Do we have a response prepared?" she asked, her voice calm. General Carter, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for composure under pressure, cleared his throat. "Madam President, we've scrambled every available fighter jet and mobilized ground forces, but we're outclassed. Their technology is decades, if not centuries, beyond ours. Then a direct confrontation isn't an option," Martinez said. She turned to Dr. Naomi Reed, head of the Space Research Division. "What about their vulnerabilities? Anything our analysts have picked up?" Dr. Reed hesitated, brushing a strand of curly hair from her face. "Their ships appear to use an advanced energy shielding system. We can't penetrate it with our current weaponry. However," she paused, her voice lowering, "we've detected patterns in their movements. They rely heavily on centralized command structures. If we can disrupt their chain of command, we might buy time." Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Time is exactly what we need. Open communications." In the skies above, Vorlitha's projection flickered as Earth's response came through. Martinez appeared on every screen and broadcast channel, her dark eyes steady and unyielding. "This is President Olivia Martinez of the United States of America, speaking on behalf of the people of Earth. We do not recognize your authority. You may consider this our answer." No, for a moment. Silence stretched across the room as the message was relayed to the Empire's flagship. Then, Vorlith let out a low, rumbling laugh, his claws tapping against the control panel in front of him. "Bold, for a prey species." Ashrek looked up from his console, his brow furrowed. "Commander, their response is unusual. No displays of fear. They seem to be coordinating something." Vorlith dismissed the concern with a wave. "Typical defiance. They'll crumble once we apply pressure. Dispatch a detachment to their capital. A demonstration of force will suffice." Unbeknownst to the Empire, Earth had already begun its countermeasures. Military satellites shifted into new positions, tracking every movement of the alien fleet. Cybersecurity teams worked around the clock, probing the invaders' communication systems for weaknesses. Meanwhile, on the ground, ordinary citizens began to mobilize, scientists, engineers, and veterans working together to repurpose existing technology for unconventional warfare. Hours later, as the Empire's detachment descended toward Washington, the skies erupted in chaos. Alien landing craft encountered unexpected resistance, not from advanced weapons, but from the ingenuity of humans who had spent centuries perfecting asymmetric warfare. Vorlith watched from the flagship, his confidence wavering as reports filtered in. "Their ground forces are adapting," Ashrek stammered. "They're using guerrilla tactics, coordinating attacks on multiple fronts. Our teams are." "They're what?" Vorlith's voice was sharp, his red eyes narrowing. "Being overwhelmed, sir." For the first time in his long career, Vorlith felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping into his chest, disquiet. He studied the holographic map of Earth, where human forces were outmaneuvering his troops with surprising efficiency. The humans were not panicking as prey should. They were fighting back, not with superior firepower, but with strategy, tenacity, and an almost predatory cunning. Back on the ground, President Martinez watched the reports coming with grim satisfaction. The aliens were still advancing, but their arrogance had cost them. Every step they took deeper into human territory made them more vulnerable. "They expected us to roll over," General Carter said, a rare note of approval in his voice. Martinez nodded, her expression hardening. "They thought we were prey. Let's show them just how wrong they are." Above Earth, Vorlith stared out the observation window, his claws flexing. This was not how it was supposed to go. The humans were supposed to cower. Instead, they were pushing back. He turned to Ashrek, his voice cold. "Prepare for full-scale deployment. If they want to fight, we will show them the true power of the Empire." Ashrek hesitated, the same flicker of unease returning to his face. "Commander, with respect, these humans, they're not behaving like prey." Vorlith's eyes burned brighter. "Then we'll remind them of their place." In the quiet that followed, Earth's night sky lit up as the next wave of Empire ships descended. On the ground, humanity braced itself. This was no longer a simple invasion. This was the beginning of something far greater, a battle for survival, and perhaps for dominance. The Empire's landing craft tore through Earth's atmosphere, sleek black vessels that shimmered with energy shields and bristled with weaponry. Their destination, a remote Midwestern town the humans called Blackridge. It was an insignificant target by the Empire's standards, chosen as a test case. The plan was simple: descend, dominate, and return with captives to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Inside the lead craft, Commander Vorlith's voice crackled over the comms. "Neutralize any armed resistance. Capture specimens for interrogation. Ensure no survivors capable of spreading dissent. These creatures must understand their place." Squad Leader Criven, a towering figure clad in dark exoskeletal armor, activated his weapons array. His squad of 6 elite soldiers, each trained to pacify entire planets, stood ready. Yet as their craft broke through the cloud cover, Criven found himself staring at a landscape far removed from the chaotic metropolises the Empire had scanned. Rows of corn stretched out in endless green waves, broken only by scattered farmhouses and narrow, winding roads. The tranquility unsettled him. He had subdued urban jungles, wiped out forests teeming with predators, but this quiet expanse felt wrong. The ship landed in an open field, its engines scorching the grass below. Criven stepped out first, his weapon raised, scanning for movement. The rest of the squad followed in formation, fanning out with military precision. Still, there was nothing, no screams, no scrambling civilians. Only the wind rustling the cornstalks. Thermal scans show movement to the west, one soldier reported, his voice muffled by his helmet. Criven nodded, gesturing for the squad to advance. The group moved cautiously, their armor gleaming under the midday sun. But as they approached the source of the heat signatures, A sharp whistle pierced the air. The explosion was instantaneous, sending 2 soldiers flying as the ground beneath them erupted in a cloud of shrapnel and dirt. Kriven whirled around, shouting commands, but the landscape offered no clear enemy, just endless cornfields and the occasional flicker of sunlight on metal. A second explosion followed, then a third. Panic rippled through the squad as their comms filled with static, drowning out Vorlitha's orders from above. "Spread out." Kriven barked, his voice tinged with frustration. "Find the source of these attacks." What they didn't know was that the attacks were not the work of a sophisticated alien foe, but of humans. Farmers, mechanics, and veterans who had repurposed old equipment and homemade explosives. Hidden among the cornstalks and in abandoned barns, they watched as the aliens stumbled into their traps. In one such hiding spot, retired Marine Sergeant Caleb Grant crouched behind an overturned tractor, his rifle balanced on the hood. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He had spent months organizing the people of Blackridge, training them to fight with whatever they had. Hunting rifles, fireworks, even gasoline-filled bottles. "Hold your fire," he murmured into a handheld radio. Around him, other townsfolk waited in silence, their breaths shallow as they watched the aliens regroup. The soldiers moved with precision, their advanced armor and weapons designed for open combat, not ambushes. But Caleb had learned long ago that war wasn't about having the best equipment. It was about using what you had to its fullest. The moment the squad split into smaller groups, Caleb gave the signal. A volley of bullets and makeshift projectiles erupted from the cornfields, striking the soldiers from all sides. One alien fell, its armor sparking as it crumpled to the ground. Another turned to fire into the crops, only to step on a concealed spike trap. Kriven roared in frustration, firing wildly at the unseen assailants. "Cowards, show yourselves." But the humans didn't oblige. They moved like ghosts, appearing just long enough to take a shot before vanishing into the tall stalks. Kriven's squad, so confident in their superiority, was being systematically dismantled. One of the soldiers broke formation, charging toward a faint silhouette in the distance. The figure darted into a barn, and the alien followed without hesitation. Seconds later, the barn exploded in a fiery burst, the blast shaking the ground. From his vantage point, Caleb winced. That had been Old Man Harlan's barn, packed with propane tanks for this very moment. Harlan himself had set the trap, luring the alien in before sacrificing himself to ensure its success. The cost of resistance was steep, but Caleb knew it was necessary. The people of Blackridge weren't fighting for glory or revenge. They were fighting to survive, to send a message that humanity wouldn't roll over and die. As the battle raged, Kriven realized his squad was losing. His advanced weaponry was useless against an enemy he couldn't see. He activated his comms, hoping to call for reinforcements, but the signal was jammed. Desperation crept into his voice as he barked orders to the remaining soldiers. Fall back to the landing site. Regroup. But when they reached the clearing, their ship was gone. Smoke rose from the field where it had once stood, the wreckage smoldering after a carefully placed explosive had disabled it. Kriven's chest heaved as he scanned the horizon. His soldiers were battered and bloodied, their once imposing presence reduced to a handful of disoriented survivors. And the humans were still out there, watching, waiting. From the shadows of the cornfields, Caleb emerged, flanked by a dozen others. They were armed with a motley assortment of weapons, their faces grim but determined. "This is your only warning," Caleb called out, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Leave, or none of you make it out alive." Kriven raised his weapon, but the humans didn't flinch. He could see it in their eyes. The resolve, the fury. These weren't prey. These were predators defending their territory. For the first time in his life, Kriven felt fear. It was a primal, bone-deep terror he couldn't rationalize. He had faced countless species, crushed rebellions, and conquered worlds. But these humans, they were different. Without another word, he activated his distress beacon, signaling for emergency extraction. He and the remaining soldiers backed away slowly, their weapons still raised but their confidence shattered. As the alien shuttle descended to retrieve them, Caleb watched with narrowed eyes. This was just the beginning. They had won the skirmish, but the war was far from over. Still, one thing was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. As the aliens departed, the people of Blackridge emerged from their hiding places, bruised but victorious. Caleb turned to his group, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "They'll be back," he said. "And next time, they'll bring more firepower." One of the younger fighters, a woman named Sarah, clenched her fists. "Then we'll hit them harder." Caleb nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Damn right we will." Above them, the alien shuttle disappeared into the sky, leaving behind a planet far more dangerous than the Empire had ever imagined. Vorlitha's crimson eyes scanned the tactical display aboard the Dominion Spear. The holographic map of Earth flickered with indicators of alien troop movements, but more distressingly, it was peppered with bright red markers, sites of significant resistance. What should have been a swift subjugation was devolving into chaos. His subordinates moved nervously around him, their confidence shaken by a foe they had grossly underestimated. "Status report," Vorlich growled, his voice colder than the void outside. "Commander," Lieutenant Isrek began, his voice unsteady. 17 of our landing forces have been neutralized or have ceased reporting entirely. Human countermeasures have escalated faster than anticipated. They appear to be operating with a level of coordination that," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "is inconsistent with their technological standing." Vorlitha's claws scraped the console. "What you mean to say is that we have underestimated them." Isrek flinched but said nothing. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the ship systems. On Earth, the humans were far from silent. In a hidden command center buried deep beneath a decommissioned missile silo in Montana, President Olivia Martinez stood before a digital map of the globe. Bright blue indicators flashed, marking the locations of human resistance cells. Around her, a mix of military generals, intelligence analysts, and civilian advisors exchanged data and strategy updates. "How's the cyber attack progressing?" she asked, turning to Dr. Naomi Reed. The scientist pushed her glasses up her nose, her face illuminated by the screen in front of her. "Our hackers have breached their secondary communication systems. It's not just military data. We've uncovered cultural archives, logistical frameworks, even snippets of their internal doctrines." She looked up, her expression grim. "Their chain of command is rigid. They don't adapt well to decentralized operations. If we can fracture their hierarchy, we might be able to disable their entire invasion fleet." "Do it," Martinez said, "and broadcast the details to our resistance cells. Everyone needs to know how to exploit their weaknesses." Across the globe, humans were already putting those strategies into action. In the dense jungles of South America, rebel fighters lured alien patrols into elaborate ambushes, using the terrain to their advantage. In Europe, former intelligence operatives coordinated sabotage missions, planting explosives on alien supply depots. In Asia, massive crowds overwhelmed smaller alien detachments with sheer numbers, flooding their positions and dismantling their equipment piece by piece. And in Blackridge, Caleb Grant was leading a different kind of offensive. His group had grown since the first encounter. Farmers and mechanics had been joined by soldiers from nearby bases, and even volunteers from neighboring towns. They had scavenged alien weapons from fallen soldiers, reverse-engineered their energy cells, and combined them with human ingenuity. "All right, listen up," Caleb said, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the makeshift war room, a repurposed barn filled with maps, weapons, and radios. "The enemy's got a supply convoy moving through the valley at 0300. If we hit them hard enough, we can cripple their operations in this sector." Sarah, the young fighter who had proven herself in the earlier battles, stepped forward. "And if we don't, they'll reinforce, and we'll lose the upper hand," Caleb replied bluntly. "We can't give them time to regroup. We're predators now. Act like it, When the convoy arrived, it was met with an onslaught of precise, coordinated attacks. Improvised explosive devices detonated beneath the lead vehicles, creating a bottleneck that forced the aliens into defensive positions. Hidden snipers picked off soldiers one by one, while others surged forward to disable their energy shields using electromagnetic pulses cobbled together from old machinery. By dawn, the valley was silent. The convoy lay in ruins, its cargo seized, and its survivors retreating in disarray. Caleb stood amid the wreckage, staring at the alien equipment they had captured. "We're learning," he muttered to himself. But the victory was bittersweet. The cost of resistance was written in the faces of his fighters: exhaustion, grief, and a grim understanding of the battles yet to come. Back aboard the Dominion Spear, Vorlitha's frustration boiled over. "How is it possible that we are losing ground to them?" he demanded, slamming a clawed fist onto the console. "They adapt," Ashrek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We underestimated their intelligence, their ability to strategize under pressure. They've weaponized our own technology against us." Vorlith turned to the tactical map, his mind racing. This wasn't just about Earth anymore. If the humans succeeded here, they would inspire rebellion across the Empire's territories. This was no longer a simple conquest. It was a war for the Empire's very survival. "Prepare the fleet for orbital bombardment," he ordered. "If we cannot subjugate them, we will annihilate them." The room fell silent. Even Ashrek, who had served alongside Vorla for decades, looked startled. "Commander, that would violate Imperial protocols." The Council is light years away," Vorla snapped. "And they won't care about protocols if we return with our tails between our legs. Prepare the fleet." As the command was relayed, a faint beep echoed from one of the nearby consoles. Ashrek checked the display, his expression darkening. "Commander, the humans have breached our primary communication network." Vorlitha's claws froze midair. "What?" "They're in our systems," Ashrek confirmed, his voice tight. "They've disrupted our coordination. Several of our ground units are reporting total disconnection." Far below, in Montana, Dr. Reed leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing on her lips. "Got you," she whispered. Martinez watched the screen as the first reports of alien confusion came in. She turned to General Carter, who stood with his arms crossed, his stern face betraying a flicker of hope. "It's time," she said. "Send the signal. All units, all resistance cells, strike now. They're vulnerable, and we're not giving them a chance to recover." Across the globe, humanity surged forward. Alien strongholds were overrun, their defenses crumbling under the weight of human determination and ingenuity. Fighters who had once been outmatched now wielded alien weapons, turning the Empire's own power against them. In Blackridge, Caleb stood atop a captured alien vehicle, rallying his fighters for the next assault. The tide had turned, but he knew the war wasn't over. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving, once and for all, that humanity was not prey. Above the chaos, aboard the Dominion Spear, Vorlith stared at the tactical map as it was slowly consumed by red. His claws trembled, not with fear, but with rage. "Commander," Ashrek said quietly, "what are your orders?" Vorlitha's eyes burned. "Retreat," he said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "But this isn't over." "Not yet." As the Empire's fleet began to pull back, the humans below didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They simply prepared for the next fight, because they knew, deep in their bones, that predators never stop hunting. The earth trembled beneath the weight of humanity's resolve. Across the globe, the resistance forces had grown into an unstoppable tide, a wave that the Empire was ill-prepared to face. The alien fleets had retreated, but the scars of their invasion remained, and the war was far from over. Despite their tactical victories, humanity knew that the true battle had only just begun. Now, the question was not how to survive, but how to make the rest of the galaxy understand what had just happened on this small blue planet. Caleb Grant stood before a gathering of the world's leaders in a war-torn city square, flanked by veterans, strategists, and military commanders. The plaza was filled with people, all waiting for the speech that would define their future. Above them, holographic banners fluttered in the wind, displaying the symbol of the human resistance, a clenched fist rising from a globe, shattering chains. The unity forged through months of struggle was palpable in the air. Caleb had never been much for speeches. He was a soldier, a man of action, but this was different. He was no longer just a leader of Blackridge. He was the face of humanity's defiance. The eyes of the world were on him, and in his heart he felt the weight of it. He cleared his throat and stepped up to the podium, his voice carrying across the square. To the people of Earth and to the rest of the galaxy, hear this. The crowd fell silent, their attention focused entirely on him. The day the Empire arrived, we were weak, divided, and unaware of what we were facing. We were prey, or so they thought. They underestimated us. They thought they could crush us, enslave us, and that we would bow before their might. They did not understand what it means to be human. Caleb's gaze swept across the faces in the crowd, from soldiers still bloodied from the last skirmish, to civilians who had picked up weapons to defend their homes. We are survivors. We are inventors. We are warriors. When our backs were against the wall, we didn't run. We fought, we adapted, and we learned. And in doing so, we have proven that humanity is not prey. He paused, letting the words sink in, his voice growing steadier, stronger. The Empire thought they could conquer us, that their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers would bring us to our knees. But they learned a hard truth. We are not like any other species they have ever encountered. We don't fall easily. We don't break. And now, we've turned their own weapons against them. The crowd erupted in a wave of cheers, but Caleb raised a hand, silencing them. But this isn't just about us. This is about every species the Empire has ever oppressed, every world they've burned to the ground. This is a message to them. The Empire may have its power, its fleets, and its armies, but it lacks what we have. The will to fight for freedom, the will to protect what is ours. As he spoke, images flashed behind him, images of Earth's greatest moments of defiance. From the resistance fighters in the jungles to the farmers who had turned their fields into battlegrounds, from the tech experts who had hijacked alien communications to the soldiers who had stood their ground against impossible odds. Humanity, united, had become an unstoppable force. We are not just defending our home, Caleb continued. We are declaring to the galaxy that humanity will never be enslaved. We will not bow to tyranny. We will fight for our freedom, and we will fight for the freedom of every planet the Empire has subjugated. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a stirring of energy that built like a storm. This was no longer about surviving the invasion. It was about ensuring that no one else would ever have to endure what humanity had faced. From the rear of the square, a figure stepped forward, President Olivia Martinez. She had been with Caleb through the darkest moments of the war, her strength and leadership a constant source of inspiration. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell into a respectful silence. We, as a species, have learned something powerful, Martinez said, her voice clear and firm. That when we come together, when we stand united, we are capable of anything. The alien invaders thought we were weak, that we would break under the weight of their might. They were wrong. She turned to Caleb, her expression softening for a moment. And it was because of people like Caleb, people who refuse to give up, that we stand here today. We are no longer just a species trying to survive. We are a species with a purpose. Caleb nodded, his hand over his heart. And that purpose is clear. We will never again be the hunted. This is humanity's declaration to the universe. We are no longer prey. Martinez stepped forward, and together they raised their hands. From this day forward, we are no longer divided by borders or countries. We are one people, and we will fight, not just for ourselves, but for all who cannot fight. We will show the Empire that their reign of terror ends here. Behind them, A massive projection unfolded, showing Earth's continents lit up in brilliant blue. Each light pulsed, growing brighter as the entire world's resistance forces linked together. From space, it looked like an electric current coursing through the planet, a signal to anyone who might be watching. "The galaxy is watching us now," Caleb said, his voice ringing out with a newfound confidence. "And we will show them that the Earth is not a prize to be taken. It is a bastion of freedom, and we will fight until the last breath if that is what it takes." The projection behind him faded to a simple phrase, one that would resonate across the cosmos for generations to come. "Humanity will not kneel." With those words, the declaration was made. The war was not over, but humanity had drawn a line in the sand. They had proven that they could stand against the Empire, and now they would make sure the rest of the universe knew it. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Caleb turned to Martinez, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "They'll be coming for us," he said, the weight of the words not lost on him. Martinez nodded, her eyes hardening. "And we'll be ready." For the first time since the invasion began, Caleb felt a sense of peace. They had won this battle, but they would need every ounce of strength to win the war. The universe would know that Earth had risen, not as prey, but as a force to be reckoned with. And this time, the galaxy would be the one in danger.